Good morning. Welcome to XJW Triple TR. Tantrums, tirades, testimonies, and recovery. In my process of waking up and um, I've gone through a lot of stages where I remember things from my childhood that I just never thought of. It's like my entire uh, life before the age of 17 was um, blocked out, just not able to remember anything specific. But as I have come to terms with, or started to come to terms with, what my life was, um, I've remembered quite a few things um, that have affected me pretty deeply. Uh, and they seem to be pretty mundane. Uh, nothing nothing terrible. Like, there was bad things that happened in my life, but some of these things that really hit me the hardest were just little things. I remember when I was in um, can't exactly remember what grade it was. Somewhere between grade 3 and grade 5. I'll just put it there. So, I'm somewhere between 7 and 10 years old. I was always alone at school. Um, I was a loner. I didn't have friends. Um, I was very socially awkward. This is a very common story. I'm sure a lot of XJWs went through this as well. Um, and in grade 5, it concerned the school, the counselors, and my teacher enough that they put me in a special, uh, like an extra class setting with 3 or 4 other uh, kids my age. And it was um, anger management and social development, how to make friends. Years upon years later, well, maybe a couple of months ago, I actually recognized that this was an Inception program in 1995 for to start testing education in the school systems for emotional intelligence. So I was in this course, and um, they put me in it and told my told my parents. They didn't really ask, which didn't bother me, but um, when my mom found out what it was about, she flipped her top. Like, um, all of this is because you don't have friends. Well, you don't need to have friends at school anyway. They're all just going to be destroyed. So um, they would have preferred me to just be alone and play alone and stay to myself. And but there's other things about that. So that was in grade 5. Now, before that, I remember at one point that there was a boy that wanted to uh, be friends. He wanted to come over after school and, um, you know, normal childhood interaction and friendship, but he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness. I never even asked my parents if it would be okay because I knew that the answer would be no. He gave me a little toy at school one time, and it wasn't anything big or anything major. It was literally about that big. It was orange, and it looked uh, like a jerry can for gas. But it would kind of transform, open up into some sort of gun shaped object. Um, and it was from uh, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy set that he had. And you know, he had brought the action figure and some of its accessories to school and for show and tell. And I really liked this little transforming gadget, and he let me have it. I knew that if I had went home and shown that to my parents, that I would have had Caleb's experience years later with Sparlock. This is something that Jehovah doesn't like. This is encouraging violence. Look, it turns into a gun. You need to throw it out. I knew that that would be the response. So I hid it. I had that thing for years. I don't anymore, but I had it for years. I kept it hidden in my room, and it was just so small that it just never was never noticed. It's my favorite mug. This was a birthday gift on my last birthday. It's my favorite. This boy, I don't remember his name anymore. His family eventually moved away. That's probably why I don't remember, because uh, he wasn't there all the way through uh, school. It started with a B. Braden, possibly. Um, he wanted to come over to my place after school, or just to play. We'd play outside or whatever. I didn't live far from the school. Maybe for a child at that age, a 5-minute walk. He lived a little further down and around the corner. Apologies for that. The so I told him that he wouldn't be able to come over, but that we could walk home. So as we walked home, we got to the end of the final corner, and it would be 4 more houses until my house. But at the end of the corner, um, you can take off in a pathway into the forest, because we lived backing onto a huge forest that went on for basically forever. Most of it's been deforested now, but then it was a very dense forest, and there was trails all in it. There was hills that we would toboggan on that would go down through a gully and across a creek, and just a really nice area. And I had grown up on it, so I knew my way around in the forest. So we were walking home, and we got to the end of the street, And I knew that I couldn't walk home with a friend in case I got caught. And I didn't want to have to deal with that. So what we did is we, at the end of the corner, we took off into the bush, um, and we walked the rest of the way, and we're playing in the bush until we got to where, I would cut through the and pop up in my backyard. He could carry on down the rest of the trail and come out at the end of the next corner of the street, which would lead up to where he lived. But even at roughly 8 years old, I knew that my wanting to have a friend was not allowed, that I would be punished. I would be sat down with the Bible in one hand, uh, most likely a Young People Ask book, and the Red Live Forever book, and be going over everything that it says about bad associations. That scripture, 1 Corinthians 15 and 33, was the one scripture that was drilled into my head over and over and over and all the time. So I knew that having friends was unacceptable. This didn't actually hit me cognitively until very recently, when I became capable of reflecting and diving into my memories of childhood and feeling what I should have felt then and feeling it now. And that is definitely not something uh, that is fun, but it's definitely something that is necessary in healing. One of the more recent Caleb and Sophia videos showed Sophia being isolated at school, not being allowed to go on the school science trip. When this uh, episode came out, I could barely watch it. I can barely even think about it right now. They animated my life. Even down to the feelings and the emotions that they animated onto this character's face. It is absolutely disgusting that this is what they expect from children. They expect them to not be children, to not play, to not want friends, to not be involved in the natural development of the child's psyche. But the whole point of this video was not necessarily just to talk about my experience as a Jehovah's Witness child, but to talk about the experience of the other child. The other person in the equation. Yes, I had issues not being allowed to have friends, which I didn't come to deal with until later in life. But what about the other boy? What about the other kids? What about the kids that wanted to be my friend? I recently was working for random people, and I have my book out, just a book that I have with me occasionally when I'm having a lot of thoughts, because I have to write them down sometimes, and I've got a stand if you're able sticker on it. So I had this out, and I had it on their kitchen counter as I was working on finishing their job, and they came home and they saw it, and turns out that the father in the family was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. He left as a teenager and never really looked back on it until he had kids of his own. And they felt that they might be interested in having some religion in their life for the benefit of their kids. And that was when he did a deep dive into the religion that he was raised in. Thankfully, he didn't go back. But his first son wrote uh, a little essay. It's a paragraph long. Just this little essay in his class. This was in his grade 4 class. Um, so this was written just maybe last year, and it was during part of what the schools now have as emotional training, emotional intelligence training. So the essay assignment was to write about a time that you felt sad. This is what he wrote, and I have permission to share this from not only the parents but from the child himself. It says, "There's one time in my life where I had no friends. It was in grade 1, but I had a friend in kindergarten. His name was Story." He did change the names, by the way. "But there was a problem. I could only see him at school. His mom was Jehovah's Witness, so she wanted Story to only hang out with Jehovah's Witnesses, though. So the only friend I had wasn't allowed to hang out or have a play date with anyone. But when I went into grade 1, Story was going to be in my class. But Story's mom said they are going on a vacation. So I said to Mrs. Snyder that Story's on vacation. But he was going to be homeschooled. That made me really sad, and I didn't have a friend the entire year." The damage that the insular community of Jehovah's Witnesses causes goes deeper. than just their own children. It affects those around them as well, those that have no interest in the belief system. But they don't matter to Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't care about how it might affect a worldly child because they're not important. If they don't become a Jehovah's Witness, they're as good as dead. So they don't care about the collateral damage that their practices bring. Now, this child was able to be informed as to the why and the how this happened. There's a lot more to this story that I hope to be able to share it at some point. But his parents, his mom and his dad, were able to explain to him why it was like this. Because his father grew up in that same situation. And it wasn't something that to that point he had shared with his son, with his child, because he had left that part of his life behind. It's just so damaging. But it's not just damaging on ourselves or on us. It causes damage to the world. What if the boy that wanted to be my friend when I was 8-ish, what if I was the only one at the time that he felt comfortable reaching out to? It's not easy dealing with memory. But at least now I can understand what was done. And that does help. And seeing how this trauma, this life of pain and suffering that was imposed on me was also imposed on my parents, my siblings, and my relatives. I just had to get that out there. And as always, stay happy.